When it comes to muscle after 50, most men think the problem is testosterone. They chase blood tests. They argue about ranges. They blame aging. Meanwhile, the real commander of muscle and fat after 50 is standing right in front of them, completely ignored. Because this hormone doesn't make you feel like an alpha. It doesn't spike your libido. And it sure doesn't sell well. But without it working properly, nothing else matters. Not training, not your diet, not testosterone. If this hormone is broken, effort becomes noise. And that's why so many strong, disciplined men over 50 are working harder than ever and getting absolutely nothing in return. By the end of this video, you're going to understand how this hormone aids muscle growth and repair. And when controlled with precision, accelerates fat loss and restores order without starving yourself, grinding yourself into the dust, or guessing. Now, this isn't motivation. This is command and control. I'm Simon H., your Muscle After 50 coach. You ready? Come on, let's grow. The hormone I'm talking about is insulin. And before you switch off, listen carefully. Insulin is not the villain. Insulin is the gatekeeper. Insulin decides what fuel gets used, what gets stored, what gets replaced, what gets protected. Testosterone gives you potential. Insulin now, that decides whether the potential is allowed to act. Now here's why men over 50 misunderstand insulin. Yeah, it gets demonized from areas such as the low carb wars, fat loss fear, blood sugar panic. So men after 50, they try to avoid insulin altogether. And in doing so, they broke the system that allows muscle to exist. Now insulin isn't just a fat storage hormone. This is like calling the military a weapons manufacturer. Insulin is logistics, and wars are won on logistics. Now, insulin's main job is not to make you fat. Its job is to move resources. It moves glucose into the muscle, amino acids into tissue, nutrients into cells, and repairs material where damage occurred. Now, without insulin working properly, muscle repair stalls. Recovery becomes incomplete. And as for your fat loss, that locks itself down. Stress, now that stays elevated. And this is why men after 50 can train hard, eat perfectly, rest more, and still look exactly the same. The supply trucks, they're not getting through. So here's a fat loss connection. Fat loss after 50 doesn't fail because you're just eating carbs. No, it fails because your body doesn't trust insulin anymore. Years of constant snacking, stress eating, poor sleep, inflammation diet, all that does is teaches your body one thing. Insulin equals danger. So your body resists it. And when insulin is resisted, fat won't release from its cells, muscle won't rebuild, hunger gets louder, energy gets all erratic. And that's not weakness. That's defensive biology. And here's why training harder makes the problem even worse, and where good men screw themselves over. They feel stalled. So what do? They add more training. But what does training do? Training increases demand. And demand without insulin sensitivity, all it does is increases stress, like cortisol. So stress then worsens insulin resistance. So the harder you push, the tighter the system clamps down. And this is why more volume backfires. And it's why more cardio stalls fat loss. More discipline. It now feels pointless. Because effort without discipline control becomes punishment. Now, muscle after 50 doesn't just disappear because you can't stimulate it. No. What actually happens is it disappears because it can't be maintained. Now, insulin is required because it suppresses muscle breakdown. It allows protein synthesis and it completes repairs. Now, if insulin is dysfunctional, training becomes or creates damage. Repair just can't finish. Muscle erodes slowly. Now, this is why men shrink without even noticing, because it's not dramatic losses, it's just quiet erosions. Now, I just want to slip this in before we go any further, because it goes right to the core of what I believe, and that's about being unbreakable after 50. See, unbreakable after 50 doesn't mean being indestructible. No, it means being resilient under stress, responsive to training, capable of recovery, and reliable day to day. Now, insulin sensitivity is what makes that possible. A man whose insulin works adapts instead of accumulates damage. He loses fat without obsession, holds muscle without panic. He sleeps better and he thinks clearer. That is unbreakable after 50. Okay, brother, let's get real concrete. 1. Earn insulin. Don't fear it. Insulin works best when it is earned. Hard, controlled training. Clear recovery windows. And no grazing on food all day. Insulin should arrive with purpose and not become background noise. 2. Stop snacking like a civilian. See, every snack is a supply request, and constant request equals system overload. I want you to eat meals, let insulin rise, let it fall. That trains sensitivity. 3, train to create a sink. Muscle is where glucose should go. Now, if training doesn't force muscle to adapt, insulin has nowhere safe to deliver fuel. That's where the shit-style training program matters. And this is the one that I teach. Few exercises, high intent, clear failure, full recovery. Now, if you want the inside scoop on shit, which is slow, high intensity tension, watch this video next. The link is in the show notes. 4, place carbs where they belong. Carbs are not evil. They are contextual. Around training, after training, when insulin sensitivity is highest. Random carbs plus insulin resistance equals storage of fat. And 5, you've got to manage stress or you're going to pay for it later. You see, stress hormones block insulin action. No supplements override that. Sleep, breath work, recovery days that actually make you recover. This is not softness. This is command discipline. Now, before we go any further, I want you to ask yourself these questions. 1, does fat loss feel locked despite your efforts? 2, do carbs make you feel tired instead of strong? 3, does training flatten you instead of rebuild you? 4, do you feel wired but weak? Now, if you answer yes to any of those, it's quite possible that insulin is the bottleneck. Now, we're going to do some quick myth busting. So myth number 1, lower insulin is always better. The truth? Insulin you can't use is the problem. Next myth. This is genetics. The truth? It's behavior plus stress plus time. The third myth. I need TRT. Truth? Testosterone without insulin sensitivity is a sports car with no fuel delivery. Now, when it comes to the gym, a system that judges training by repeatable output demands insulin that actually works. Now, if insulin can't deliver resources, effort doesn't land, recovery doesn't get restored, muscle doesn't stay. Rules always require logistics, and insulin is logistics. Now, here's where insulin becomes an absolute weapon, because insulin isn't the enemy. I'll tell you what is the enemy. Random insulin is the enemy. Background insulin, all day insulin. Insulin you didn't earn, now that's the enemy. But post-workout insulin, now that's a different beast. You see, post-workout is the one time of the day your body is begging for a clean delivery. Muscle has been damaged. The fuel tank has been drained. The signal has been fired. Now, insulin has a job to do. Get resources into the muscle. Fast, clean, no detours. So here's a post-workout shake that I use and why it works. Now we have whey protein, and that's fast amino acids. Leucine, freeform, the muscle building front loader, the trigger man. Dextrose and honey, fast carbs to cool insulin in. Creatine, now that recharges the ATP battery. And good quality salts and electrolytes to help transport carbs, and it also aids in hydration. Now, this isn't a dessert. This is like a resupply drop. Whey, that brings the bricks. Leucine kicks the foreman awake. Dextrose, it calls in insulin like a convoy escort. Creatine stocks the army for the very next session. Salts, that keeps the whole operation moving instead of stalling. That's the good side of insulin. Not storage, but pure ass delivery. Oh, and here's why this shake comes before a meal. Because speed matters. You see, a solid meal is slower digestion, slower absorption, more variables. The shake, on the other hand, now that's controlled, fast, predictable. It gets the job started absolutely immediately. Then, after the first delivery is underway, 60 to 90 minutes later, you eat a real meal to finish the rebuild. Shake first for rapid logistics, meal second for sustained construction. That's how you use insulin like a tool, instead of letting it use you. Here is where men get played. They use insulin correctly once. Then they leave it running all day like a generator with no mission. And chronic insulin, background insulin, is where the destructive side lives. When you're talking about things like fat loss after 50, that's when things like that get locked up. So the rule is simple. I want you to turn insulin on purpose. Turn insulin off on purpose. I'm going to show you how. Stop snacking. Snacking is like insulin graffiti. It tags your system all day, and then you're left wondering why things aren't changing. Build clean gaps between meals to let your insulin rise naturally and fall naturally. That's what restores sensitivity. Now, use tools strategically, not like magic pills. So now, here's a quick note. These don't replace food. They're like structures and support what you're doing. So supplements like chromium helps some men with glucose handling. Ceylon cinnamon, which is the good cinnamon, that supports insulin response. Again, these are not magic, they are supports. So the chromium and things like the cinnamon, they act like the stabilizers on a rifle. They don't fire the shot for you, they help you to aim clearer. The mission is still the mission. Insulin on after training, insulin off the rest of the day. That's how you get fat loss and muscle after 50 working together instead of fighting each other. Insulin and growth hormone live on like a seesaw. When one is high, the other is usually low. Not because they hate each other, but because the body runs two kind of modes. Mode 1, feeding, muscle mode. That's insulin. Insulin says, we have resources, store, repair, rebuild. This is where muscle building is supported, especially post-workout when muscle is like a sponge. Now we have mode 2. And mode 2 is fasting and mobilization mode. Now that's growth hormone. Growth hormone says, we are not eating right now, so protect that lean muscle, mobilize fat, repair deeper systems. Now, growth hormone doesn't like constant insulin because constant insulin tells the body food is always available. So the body stops mobilizing, stops digging into them fat stores, and stops doing that deeper repair work. Because this is where things get really interesting. Now, there's a peptide your body already makes that directly improves how your cells respond to insulin, not by forcing blood sugar down and not by stimulating insulin harder, but by making the muscle listen again. Now, that peptide is called MOTS-C. And no, this isn't a gym supplement, and it isn't a pre-workout hack. This is a mitochondrial signal. Now, MOTS-C comes from inside the cell's power plant, the part of you responsible for turning fuel into usable force. And here's a key point for men over 50. You see, as you age, this signal drops. When it drops, muscles stop responding efficiently to insulin. Fuel shows up, but the door doesn't open. That's insulin resistance. Not because insulin disappeared, but because the tissue stopped answering the call. Now, MOTS-C changes that conversation. Now, in research settings, it improves insulin sensitivity inside the muscle. It increases glucose uptake without increasing insulin demand. And it shifts energy use towards muscle instead of storage. And while MOTS-C is so powerful, it is also the reason why a lot of men have no business touching it yet. You see, most MOTS-C research is still emerging. This is a performance signal, not a lifestyle shortcut. And what I just mentioned is not medical advice. So always talk with a professional first. Now, I want you to remember, insulin resistance isn't killed by chemistry alone. It is killed when muscle earns the right to respond again. And that brings us right back to the rule. If your training doesn't demand an output, no peptide on the earth will save you. So again, watch this video next if you want to up your gym game without borrowing from your joints and your connective tissue. Link is in the show notes. After 50, testosterone, it doesn't decide the outcome. Insulin does. It decides what you keep, what you lose, what recovers, and what erodes. Fix insulin, and muscle after 50 becomes possible again. If you ignore it, you'll grind forever for nothing. Now, this isn't about dieting. This is about command. Because the mission continues. Peace.